very clear places that they would want to go to so that they fulfill their obligations for today. If that is not done, then we are definitely going to get it wrong. But just allow me just a small interjection that...
All right, I'll allow you to interject. I just want to take note that we have pictures there on your screen from Kisumu, Mombasa. Already they have begun the march. And of course, we've seen Kalonzo Musyoka, Eugene Wamalwa and other opposition leaders laying flowers on the razor wire because they were unable to access the exterior of Parliament. But you had an interjection.
So there's definitely no facilitation. So police have definitely failed in this, and we take this to the doorstep of the state. But I think the point I wanted to make is the point of the conversation about police reforms in this country. That it's a tired conversation. Tired in the sense that we are not making any movements in it. And I just want to take us back slightly that when we had the 2007-2008 post-election violence, when the over 1,300 people died, the Waki Commission said that we needed to have a genuine reforms of the police. And we set up the Philip Ransley Task Force that provided us with over 200 recommendations on various aspects. But you notice that in terms of those recommendations, there's been movements on certain parts, but there are no movements of certain parts. We've established institutions. We've done National Police Service Commission. We've done the National Police Service. We've done Independent Policing Oversight Authority. We've made a lot of investment in the police, looking at it. But I think the more we move ahead, the more we come backwards. And I think increasingly, we've come to associate police reforms in this country with money. And the question we need to ask ourselves is, what does a police need to know that he should not shoot someone on the head? Does that need money? What does police need to know that you should not make arbitrary arrest? Does that need money? So it's a question about how do we deal with our software in the police if we are looking for the change that we desire. I think if that is not done, then we are increasingly going to have the tired narrative of let's reform the police, but we don't make any movement.
All right. So Kawive, just pick it. You want to pick up on what Samson said?
I want to say that dealing with the software of the police will go up to will have to start at the point of culture and training. How do you change the police? The police historically were formed. The police force was formed to defend property and protect big people. Here, the white people transitioned to leaders, political leaders, and others. So, and protect them against what? Against the other people, who are the majority poor, the ones who do not have authority and power. So, of necessity, the culture of police is that they see everybody else as a potential criminal. You are either a big, powerful person who needs protection, or you are a potential criminal who needs to be kept away from property and from power. No, that is the culture in the training. And I have said this before. Maybe I have not given the proposal to the Kenya National Commission that we need a training in the police called behavior change communication. There are very many experts in this country on behavior change communication that can sort of ingrain the training of police, even if it's the new ones who are coming in, so that we start that reculturalization, a change of culture, a change of perspective, a change of modus operandi. Citizens are not criminals. I am not predisposed. Even the Penal Code has got provisions that say that if you are walking around, you are potentially going to commit a crime. And that is the outlook that police have. That is the vagrancy law. They call it? The vagrancy law. Yeah. So, if it is possible to bring together or to bring up a culture of humane treatment, that I'm a human being first, and therefore only next can I be helped to either access something or get something done, and the police can be able to do that. Then they become facilitative, as opposed to being prohibitive and oppressive.
Okay.
I think, and that does not have to do with individual, because police, I could have been a policeman. But if I had gone through the kind of training and brainwashing that the police go through in their training, I would not be talking like I am. I had a conversation with Owino here as he was leaving earlier. And you can't understand him. Because the frame of his thinking is totally off. It's totally off from humanity. And I think that's a training thing. It's a thing about how our policemen and women trained.
Okay.
Because before they are trained, they're usually very good. They're no more like me and you. We can reason together. But now, after that training and the deployment, they become, we have an enmity. Like they start hating you, you start looking like you will commit a crime, and they will not. You know, that's
there are those who would argue not all police are bad, right?
No,
but there is Samson.
No, I don't agree with that, Olives, because, I mean, the narrative of not all police are bad and that we just have a few apples that are bad is also a tired one. Tired in the sense that the few that are bad are doing a lot of damage.
Yeah.
They're doing a lot of killings. They are doing a lot of extrajudicial executions. They are doing a lot of corruption. So the talk is about, can we clean the entire system? And we have the software, we have the hardware for doing that, but we've refused to do it. So it's not that all are bad.
All right. So let me ask you, Wangeshi, are there two sets of rules? And I ask, like, you know what Kawive is saying, that if you're not in power, then you're a potential criminal. And I ask that question because aside from this whole narrative that's been posed as the protesters are the aggressors, you've not seen accountability where the goons that infiltrated the protests on Tuesday is concerned. We've seen a lot of political distancing statements from Johnson Sakaja, but he says known individuals. So what, has he recorded a statement with police? And then again, you have statements such as Kamket made, which are reckless, outrightly reckless statements. And still nobody is calling that out. There's a very loud silence.
Spot on, Olive, and that's what I wanted to really speak to. Kamket makes all these crazy, I don't even know what to call them, pronouncements. And he's saying, we will, how many of you want to go to Nairobi? Oh, you know, let me tell you, from when he's made those statements, there has been zero action. Unless he was arrested last night, which I'm not aware of, no one has taken any action whatsoever. So it is true what Kawive is saying. We have two sets of rules. There are rules for those who are, and there are rules for those who are thought to be criminals, to those who will cause, havoc, to those who are rioting. By the way, it's not rioting. And I want us to look at these pictures because they really mean a lot. You can see people, look at all this audience. They have zero weapon. From where I sit, I have not seen a single weapon with the protesters. They're carrying placards and showing them. They have a national flag, patriotic, that they have tied on their on parts of their bodies, and they are chanting because it's a memory that they are making. There's not a single one of them who's carrying a weapon. Now, you're faced by police who are well equipped. You have seen the trucks, you've seen, they're armed. So when it comes to managing law and order, and allow me to quickly read some of the do's and don'ts that are provided for, and the police know these do's and don'ts. One of the things is crowd management and the need for de-escalation. The Public Order Management Act says...
Okay, so before you get into the do's and don'ts, I just want us to get a sense of what the mood is out there. Let's just listen a little bit and listen to the natural sounds coming out of Mombasa. We're hearing there a lot of what we had. Remember on June 18th, the we are peaceful chants.
Yes.
Maybe Wakili should advise them we are peaceable.
Yeah.
But you're talking about the do's and don'ts.
And that's why, that's an important clip that we have seen. So some of the do's and don'ts say use nonviolent methods to manage and de-escalate situations to avoid unnecessary force. The police are trained on how to de-escalate. And all they need to do is calm the crowd and also detect who are the people who are infiltrating and who are the peaceful protesters. Number 2, ensure access to medical aid to anyone joining. Allow lawyers to access clients in custody. Wear official uniform. Be identifiable in badge number to promote accountability. Maintain records of all enforcement actions and provide transparency to the public. Respect and protect people's rights and individuals to express their views and assemble peacefully. So all these are provided for in law. And there are also do's and don'ts for the public. But some of the don'ts for the police: don't use excessive force in such as unlawful use of tear gas and rubber bullets. Don't obstruct medical personnel from performing their duties. Don't infringe on the rights of journalists and monitors, those who are monitoring. Those are some of the do's and don'ts, right? The public also has their do's and don'ts. Give the notification. By the way, you're not supposed to be asking for permission to hold a protest. You just give a notification that we'll be going to protest and pass our petition on this day. We will use the following routes, and the times are between 6 and 6. That is what is provided in law. So back to the question around, condoning. 6 to 6 is actually the time that the law provides for in terms of protest. So if there was to be any condoning, it should have closed at 6, and 6 in the evening they can condone if they want to. But it shouldn't be an open condoning. So in regards to what is happening today, and just going back to our clarion call, the police service, as we call it, is supposed to be utumishi kwa wote. And I do agree. Protect the business, protect the protesters. We all have rights. But today, let's not digress and start talking about anything else, including the politicians. Today, let it be a day to commemorate the memories of those who lost their lives, the memories of those who were abducted, tortured for days on end, in a lot of pain. Yesterday, I listened to Bob Jage, I listened to the Long-Term Brothers, I listened to a lot of survivors who are expressing their pain. Let us give them their day. It's just one day to commemorate, to lay their wreaths and say, at least I have poured myself out. We do a lot of psychosocial support as IMLU and a lot of our other organizations. This is a very important part of the healing process. Let us ensure that they get this. There has been zero accountability. And we are going to go back to the question of accountability, and Samson has spoken a lot about that question.
Okay. So let me bring in Wakili.
Okay.
At this point, how do we build that confidence between the police and the public? Because as much as Wangeshi has told us the do's and don'ts, when you look at Boniface Kariuki, what didn't he do?
Yeah, he did nothing.
Wakili.
Yeah, I think I'm now happy that we have moved away from the previous discussion and now discussing the systemic issues that we should deal with. And the issue of Kariuki is quite sad, just like the issue of the other victims of police brutality. There is, it can never be acceptable that anybody should be injured or die in the streets because of going out to protest. And I agree with my colleagues on the procedures the police should use in de-escalation. And I'm hoping that we can, be able to train our policemen on this. And the reason why I say this, I was an activist from a very young age. I grew up in Kisumu. I grew up in the slums of Manyata. And police brutality was one of the problems we had. And one day we protested and went to the PPO, then was called Grace Kaindi. She later became, I think, the deputy DG. Yes. Yeah. And when I went to her and we presented a petition, and we asked her, why is the Mariam. There was a lorry called the Mariam, raiding our neighborhoods every Friday and Saturday and arresting every young person. Why is police shooting at us in the streets? Madam Kaindi told me, and I still remember that Nyamuri, I agree with you fully on what you are saying. That is what we should do. However, the problem is that what we are doing is what we were trained at Kiganjo. So every OCS is expected and trained that he must at least once in a week or so carry out raids. Okay. So what am I saying? We need a whole system change. Kaindi was actually telling me that you need to go to Kiganjo and change the curriculum. You get my point? Well, that was many years ago. It speaks to the problem that we have. And so I would want us to join together, because some of these entities that we actually even condemn, we have human rights defenders who have moved into them. And they are facing challenges from within. We need to support them. We need to understand the challenges. For instance, IPOA, Samsung's CEO sits in IPOA. I know, for instance, that a lady that we have worked with in human rights work under Kituo cha Sheria, that is Dr. Annette Mbogo, sits in IPOA. We need to sit down with them, understand what are the challenges, how can we then support them. But when we then take the entire IPOA and condemn it as a body that should not even exist, the well least we as people who are in the civil society have had our people go in there. What do we expect them to do? There must be a problem why they are not effective where they were, while they were effective where we are now. What I'm saying is that as a country, we need to take this opportunity. And June 25th gives us an opportunity to think about it. And I'm calling upon people that let's not think about police brutality in the last 1 year. If we talk about it in the last 1 year, we are lying to ourselves. Some of us have seen worse than this. And we saw it in this country. And we are asking the country that we cannot keep quiet about that. I have mothers, I have orphans that I have worked with, that are suffering in the villages and slums all over the country, that we should listen to. Okay. But human rights also goes beyond even these killings in the road. We have families that have been evicted by systems. I am right now in Supreme Court defending a case that I started defending at the ESC court of a community at Kibos, 3,500 families that were displaced while they were settled there in 1937. Okay. So we need to discuss this thing wholesomely and be able to resolve what the problems are.
Okay, I hear you. So, Samson, can we I know you've talked a lot about these tired cliches, bad apples. You said the police reform, discussion is tired. But can there be true progress without political goodwill? And I use another cliche, Samson.
Another very difficult one, because I think, and I agree with Nyamori on a couple of things that he has said. One of the things that we had wanted when we started the conversations of reforming the police in 2007, 2008 was that we needed to completely divorce policing from the executive. So what are some of the things that we needed to do? We needed to have an independent inspector general that would have independent command of the National Police Service. And the question I would want to pose to us today is, do we have an inspector general who has independent command over the National Police Service? I think that's one question to throw out there. The second question to throw out is, do we have an executive that still meddles on policing work? I think the third thing is, do we have political class, apart from just the executive, that also meddles on the on the work of the police? And the answer is, there has been no movement. Policing remains to be highly controlled by the executive. Policing remains to be highly controlled by the political class. The independence of the police has remained to be questioned over time. Fine, there are a couple of things that have been done, giving them a budget, making movements here and there. But in terms of making them truly independent, and if you look at the Office of the Inspector General, the Constitution and the National Police Service calls for an independent Inspector General that will not take orders from anyone, and if orders are to be given to him or her, they must be given in writing. Unfortunately, what we have seen is that the Office of the Inspector General still remains like an appendage of the executive. So policing remains to be controlled at that level, and I think that hampers progress moving forward. So as we speak about reforms, as we speak about giving them money to do more, but money to do more what? Because investigations would still be controlled. Training would still be controlled and all this. So again, moving forward, unless we are able to deal with the software. And the thing is, we have a culture that will be in the police, and it's a culture of corruption. It's a culture of impunity. It's a culture of human rights violations. It's a culture with all these bad words. And I always say that policing is the visible representation of the government. And therefore, if police behave in a manner that is acceptable, it means that that government behaves in a manner which is acceptable. And if we have a police that has this culture of corruption, impunity, extrajudicial executions, enforced disappearances, abductions, you can name all of them, that represent what the government does. So it's in the best interests of the executive, it's in the best interest of the political class, it's in the best interest of all Kenyans that have a role that we make police be that visible representation of government that will represent government in terms of the good things that the government does. So long as we continue to have police doing bad things, government will continue to do bad things. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'll bring you in at this point, Kawive, this politicization of policing, right? We had a statement by different diplomatic, what do I call them? Diplomatic missions in the country yesterday. And we saw a statement from the head of Foreign Affairs Committee in Parliament immediately. We saw a statement from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and they took offense to this statement and said, this is respect our sovereignty. You are not policing us. How is it? What do you make of that?
And even you forgot where Murkomen called people take advantage of protesters, political scavengers. So there's all that noise about, or in response to what external actors, missions and whatever say. But there are things that are universal. One, Kenya is not an island. We live in a community of nations. So any evil that is being done in Kenya or in one of the other nations will reflect on what we may call the world peace map or the world relations map. So diplomatic missions are here because they are accredited by the state. And they represent their nation and their people. So when they say that, for example, police should not kill or, prevent people. I think
they also referenced
they talked about goons as well. Prevent people from protesting. That is the voice of their government. They have a right to say so. And if the government has a problem with being told what the perspective of other countries are, you can close the mission. Tell them to go away. Because they come with their perspective. You cannot allow me to come to this studio and then you give me a script to read. I can as well stay at home and you read your script. So the point is that freedom of expression, that they have a right to be here, and if the government feels that they do not want to hear external voices, and actually the voice of other nations around, because it is clear when police are closing the civic space. They are saying people do not protest. When the police are condoning goons, you know, have been mobilized, and we see very clearly they are working with the police, like the case was, like Wangeshi was saying here. It is the surest path to going to civil strife. Why? Because these goons and their formations will become a power on their own. And then they will now contest for political space with both the police and political actors. If you remember, sometime in the 80s and 90s, there were gangs like that in Gisakasaga, I think in Kisii, Amachuma. You heard about the Baghdad boys and whatever. They became powers. They became points of power and focus, so that then they are used for political purposes, and then when they are not being used, they form their own political power bases. Mongiki is another example. They were used politically, and then they became powerful and formed their own. And the government had to invest a lot in terms of tearing down these gangs. So we should not entertain that kind of thing, because creating a space for another organ outside the police to enforce or to fight citizens in the civic space is totally Haiti. Our police went to Haiti to keep the peace. What is the problem with Haiti? Goons. People who have taken over policing. People who have taken over the state and other functions of government. So that warning is spot on. We should not entertain other people. The reason why we have a police service is because we need laws to be enforced. We need peace to be kept. We need a predictable way of following the law. And that is what we are urging the police to do, even ourselves, that, they have a constitutional responsibility. They should fulfill that responsibility by doing what is right.
Okay.
And what is right is not ambiguous.
All right.
You cannot shoot somebody in the head and say you are keeping peace. No. You cannot block us. You know, when you look at these streets close like this, it reminds you of Nazi Germany, the swastika. It's where we had this kind of cordoning of roads. That wire, what is it called? The wire?
Razor
wire.
Yeah.
Electric.
Is a Hitler thing.
Okay.
Is that what we are seeing here?
All right, let me bring in Wangeshi. What will it take to shock the system? And I ask that question because if you look at the Mukwana statement to IPOA regarding what happened to Albert Ojwang, that his life cost as little as 2,000 shillings for alcohol, if it is indeed proved to have been the case. It is shocking that something can happen in this day and age. You look at the picture, the video that circulated, of Boniface Kariuki, shot in the head in just, again, circumstances that were totally unwarranted. What, in your view, will it take to shake the system?
As I answer your question, let us look at the joint statement from the ambassadors and heads of missions that made this call yesterday. What they said is, as we mark today, we call on all to facilitate peaceful demonstrations and to refrain from use of force and violence, use of plain-clothed officers and unmarked vehicles. And then they go on to say we are troubled by the use of hired guns that infiltrate peaceful protests, and that they call for swift, transparent and independent investigations. What is wrong with that? Honestly, what is wrong with that statement? It's simply reinforcing the same message all of us are saying, the same message Kenyans have been saying, and the biggest problem with our government, let me be very honest, is that they don't listen. The government does not listen. It doesn't seem to care what is being said. Because if the government was listening, we would not be having already 42 people who've died within the police, under the hands of police in 2025. Now, I know Wakili here said nothing worse could have happened, after, those years, and he gave an example of a situation. But but can you imagine the loss of 67 people in 2023 during protests? 63 persons, they're actually not 60, they're 63. Yeah? We have the 60 and we will cross-check to see who are the 3 that are missing. But there are 63. 63 people in 2024. We are in June 2025. We've reported 42 deaths already, extrajudicial killings. To me, it is really out of this world. It is wrong. And when you ask what will it take to shock the system, I think we need to know that a time is coming where every duty bearer is going to answer on the question of accountability.
All right. Sorry. Question of accountability. Answer. I'll pick it up with you there. Just those pictures. This looks like the Stanley in the Central Business District.
Now see.
And we are seeing tear gas. Tear gas on Kimathi Street. So those pictures coming to you live from the Central Business District. I don't know what instigated the tear gas, but we do have reporters across the country, as you've seen, and they will provide an update.
Yeah. So Olive, people, including the executive, parliament, all the constitutional agencies and the National Police Service, we need to be responsible for our actions as an individual and as a command. If it is a police, whoever has a command control, and we are saying every individual police officer should be held accountable for their individual actions. The command responsibility